Tales of Veldrith, written and produced by Matty Taylor. Book 2, The Lens of Power. Prologue, The Vanished Caravan. The forest loomed heavy and still, its canopy thick with the dying light of the day. The caravan moved slowly along the narrow dirt path, its wheels creaking under the weight of goods bound for Jorvik. A merchant named Halrik rode at the front, his brow furrowed as he scanned the woods for any sign of movement. His caravan had made this journey many times before, but tonight felt wrong.
Keep your eyes open,
Halrik muttered to the driver beside him.
These woods have been restless lately.
The man nodded, gripping the reins tighter as the horses snorted nervously. Behind them, a small band of guards walked alongside the wagons, their weapons at the ready. The goods they carried, salt, dried fish and rare gemstones, were too valuable to risk, and yet Halrik couldn't shake the unease prickling at the back of his neck. The sun dipped below the horizon, plunging the forest into twilight. Shadows stretched long and deep, obscuring the path ahead. The chirping of crickets and the distant hoots of owls filled the air, but beneath the usual sounds of the wild, Halrik thought he heard something else, a faint rhythmic hum, like chanting carried on the wind.
Do you hear that?
He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The driver stiffened, listening.
It's probably just the wind,
he said, though his tone betrayed his doubt. Halrik frowned, motioning for the caravan to halt. The guards exchanged wary glances as the wagons creaked to a stop. The chanting grew louder now, unmistakable and unnatural. It came from the trees, reverberating through the thick underbrush like a heartbeat.
"Form up!"
barked one of the guards, drawing his sword.
"Stay close to the wagons!"
The others complied, their weapons glinting in the dim light. Halrik climbed down from his seat, his hand resting on the hilt of his dagger as he scanned the tree line. The shadows seemed to move, writhing like living things. Without warning, a brilliant flash of light erupted from the woods, blinding the caravan. Horses screamed, rearing in panic as a wave of heat surged through the clearing. Halrik stumbled back, shielding his face as flames burst from the wagons, engulfing them in a fiery inferno. Figures emerged from the trees, cloaked in robes of gold and crimson. Their faces were obscured by ornate masks, shaped like the sun's rays, and their hands glowed with unnatural fire. They moved with eerie precision, cutting down the guards with brutal efficiency.
By the gods!
Halrik gasped, retreating toward the rear of the caravan.
We're under attack.
One of the cultists turned to him, raising a hand wreathed in flame. Halrik barely had time to cry out before the fire consumed him. As quickly as it began, the attack ended. The cultists stood in silence, their ritual complete. The wagons smouldered, reduced to ash and charred remains. The masked leader stepped forward, surveying the destruction. With a motion of his hand, the others began carving strange symbols into the ground, their chant rising once more.
"The auroral lens draws near,"
the leader intoned, his voice reverberating with power.
"The sun's judgment shall cleanse this world."
When the chanting ceased, the cultists vanished into the woods, leaving behind only the burned ruins of the caravan and the sigils etched into the earth. By morning, Thorsdottir and her search party discovered the remains. The sight that greeted them was grim. Wagons reduced to blackened skeletons, bodies charred beyond recognition, and the strange symbols carved into the earth glowing faintly in the dawn light.
"What in hell's name happened here?"
one of the guards whispered, his voice trembling. Ira knelt by the nearest body, her sharp eyes scanning the scene.
"This wasn't a raid,"
she said grimly.
"This was a ritual."
One of her men called out.
"There's a survivor."
Ira rushed to his side, finding a young man slumped against a tree, his clothes singed and his face pale as death. He looked up at her with wide, haunted eyes and rasped,
The fire, it spoke. It's coming. The sun will burn us all.
He collapsed before he could say more. Ira stood, her jaw tightening as she took in the devastation. She recognized the symbols now, their meaning buried in half-remembered tales. Turning to one of her men, she barked,
"Get Vestinus. Tell him it's begun."
As the wind carried the faint smell of ash through the forest, Ira couldn't shake the feeling that Jorvik's troubles were far from over. Chapter 1. The Mark of the Sun. The knock at Vestinus's door came just as he was poring over an ancient tome. The symbols on the burned parchment before him glowed faintly under the light of his desk lantern, their jagged lines eerily similar to something he had seen centuries ago. The interruption, though unwelcome, was not unexpected.
"Come in,"
he called, his deep voice cutting through the quiet. Ira Thorsdottir entered, her usual confidence tempered by urgency. She was dressed in her travelling leathers, streaked with soot and dirt from the morning's discovery. Her pale hair was pulled into a hasty braid, and her blue eyes carried the weight of something grave.
You've heard?
She asked without preamble. Vestinus gestured to the tome.
I've seen the symbols you described. They're old. Older than Jorvik, older than the ley lines that run beneath it. They're connected to a cult I thought extinct.
Ira crossed her arms, her expression hardening.
The solar cult?
Vestinus nodded.
Their worship of the sun wasn't just devotion, it was obsession. They sought power through an artifact called the auroral lens, a relic that magnifies sunlight into destructive energy.
We found their handiwork in the woods.
Ira said.
The caravan was destroyed, the guards slaughtered. They carved those symbols into the ground, as if marking their victory.
Vestinus stood, his towering frame casting a long shadow on the wall. His crimson skin glinted in the lamplight, his horns giving him the aspect of a demon. He retrieved a thin blade from the corner of his study, slipping it into his belt.
If they're active again, it means they've found something, or someone, tied to the artifact.
Ira frowned.
A survivor from the caravan mentioned fire that spoke and claimed the sun itself would burn the world.
The cult's doctrine.
Vestinus said, his tone grim.
They believe that through the auroral lens, they can channel the sun's energy to purge the unworthy and create a new world in its image.
Then they're preparing for something big.
Ira said.
What's our move?
Vestinus glanced at the tome on his desk, then at the weapons on his wall.
We investigate the ruins they've left. The markings will tell us where they're headed next. If we're lucky, we can stop them before they find the lens.
They set out an hour later, accompanied by two of Ira's most trusted guards. The path to the caravan site was sombre, the charred scent of destruction growing stronger with each step. When they arrived, Vestinus paused to take in the scene. Wagons reduced to ash, bodies scattered like broken toys, and those same glowing symbols etched into the earth. Vestinus knelt, tracing the edges of the largest sigil. His claws hovered over the grooves, the faint pulse of residual magic thrumming through his fingertips.
This is a convergence point,
he murmured. Ira crouched beside him.
A convergence of what?
The ley lines.
Vestinus explained.
They intersect here, providing the cult with the energy they need for their rituals. These symbols amplify the flow of magic, allowing them to communicate with whatever it is they worship.
He leaned closer, inspecting the centre of the sigil where a burned patch of ground radiated heat even now.
This was no ordinary fire. It was summoned, directly tied to the artifact they seek.
One of the guards approached, his voice cautious.
We found tracks leading deeper into the woods. A large group headed west.
Vestinus stood, brushing ash from his knees.
They're moving fast. They'll want to reach their next convergence point before we can stop them.
Ira nodded, her expression resolute.
Then we follow. But this time, we take the fight to them.
As they pressed deeper into the forest, the signs of the cult's presence became increasingly apparent. Trees bore scorch marks in strange patterns, and the undergrowth was trampled as if by a large procession. The air grew warmer, thick with an unnatural humidity that prickled at the skin. Night had fallen by the time they reached a clearing. Vestinus motioned for the group to halt, his keen eyes scanning the dark shapes ahead. A ruined structure rose in the distance, its silhouette jagged and foreboding against the starlit sky.
The second site.
Vestinus said.
Another ruin tied to the ley lines.
Ira squinted into the darkness.
And it's occupied.
Torches burned around the ruins, their flickering light revealing robed figures standing guard. The faint hum of chanting drifted through the clearing, carrying with it a sense of foreboding.
We can't let them complete their ritual.
Ira whispered, unsheathing her sword.
What's the plan?
Vestinus surveyed the area, his mind racing.
I'll disrupt the ritual while you and your men handle the guards. We need to scatter them before they can finish.
Ira grinned, her eyes glinting with determination.
Then let's get to it.
The attack was swift and precise. Ira led her guards into the fray, their weapons cutting through the cultists with ruthless efficiency. The chanting faltered as the robed figures turned to face their attackers, their torches casting chaotic shadows across the ruins. Vestinus slipped past the melee, his crimson form moving like a wraith. He reached the centre of the ruins, where a large stone pedestal glowed with the same eerie light as the sigils at the caravan site. A golden disc lay atop it, radiating heat and pulsing with arcane energy.
The lens fragment.
Vestinus realised, his heart sinking.
They're piecing it back together.
Before he could act, a figure emerged from the shadows. Dressed in elaborate robes, the man carried a staff adorned with sun motifs, his face hidden behind a mask resembling a solar flare.
Vestinus,
The man said, his voice calm but dripping with contempt.
I've been expecting you.
Vestinus gripped his blade, his gaze narrowing.
Who are you?
The man removed his mask, revealing sharp features and eyes that burned with amber light.
I am Solaris, chosen of the sun, and you, fallen one, are too late.
With a wave of his staff, Solaris unleashed a surge of fiery energy, forcing Vestinus to dive for cover. The fragment on the pedestal glowed brighter, feeding off the ritual's energy.
Ira!
Vestinus shouted, rising to his feet.
The fragment! Destroy it!
The battle raged around them, but the air grew heavier, the heat more intense. As Vestinus and Solaris clashed, each strike reverberating with power, the fate of the auroral lens and Jorvik hung in the balance. Chapter 2. Flames of Defiance. The ruins erupted into chaos. The clash of steel, the shouts of combat, and the hum of arcane power filled the air as Ira and her guards fought the solar cultists. The heat from the glowing fragment on the pedestal radiated outward, searing the ground and warping the air like a distant mirage. Vestinus faced Solaris, their battle a dance of skill and power. Solaris moved with fluid precision, his staff carving fiery arcs through the darkness, each swing leaving a trail of glowing embers. Vestinus countered with calculated strikes, his blade crackling with the red glow of his magic.
You cannot win, fallen one.
Solaris snarled, his voice reverberating unnaturally.
The auroral lens will rise again, and the world will bow to the cleansing fire of the sun.
Vestinus dodged a sweep of the staff, countering with a slash that Solaris narrowly avoided.
You speak of cleansing, but all you'll bring is ruin.
Vestinus shouted.
The lens isn't salvation, it's annihilation.
Solaris laughed, a cold mocking sound.
Spoken like a creature of shadow, too blind to see the light's truth.
Across the battlefield, Ira carved through a robed cultist with a precise strike, her movements fluid and fierce.
Vest in us!
She called, her voice cutting through the din.
We need to stop that fragment now.
I'm trying.
Vestinus shouted back, locking blades with Solaris. I returned to her guards.
Hold them off. I'll take the fragment.
Without waiting for a response, she sprinted toward the glowing pedestal, the heat almost unbearable as she approached. A cultist stepped into her path, wielding a jagged dagger. Ira parried his attack, kicking him aside before leaping onto the pedestal. The fragment pulsed with golden light, its surface etched with runes that seemed to shift and writhe there under her gaze. As she reached for it, a sudden surge of energy sent her reeling, the force throwing her off the pedestal.
Foolish.
Solaris sneered, his staff crackling with energy as he parried Vestinus's next strike.
The fragment is attuned to the sun's will. Only the chosen can wield it.
Vestinus's gaze flicked toward Ira, who was already struggling to her feet.
Ira, don't touch it directly.
He warned.
It's charged with the ritual's energy.
Ira spat blood and picked up a discarded spear, her grip tightening.
Got it. Then I'll break it instead.
She hurled the spear with all her might, aiming for the fragment. The weapon struck true, but instead of shattering, the fragment absorbed the impact, flaring with blinding light. A shockwave rippled outward, knocking everyone in the ruins to the ground. Vestinus scrambled to his feet, his vision blurred from the explosion of light. The fragment now hovered above the pedestal, spinning slowly as tendrils of energy arced toward the sky. Solaris rose, his robes billowing as if caught in an unseen wind.
You only hasten the inevitable,
he declared.
The lens awakens, and soon its light will consume all.
Vestinus glared at him, his blade glowing brighter as he summoned his power.
Not while I stand.
He lunged, his blade aiming for Solaris's heart, but the cult leader was ready, deflecting the blow with a sweep of his staff. The two clashed again, sparks flying as their weapons met. Ira shook off the disorientation from the shockwave, her ears ringing. She turned to one of her guards, still standing despite the blast.
Get everyone out of here.
She ordered.
This place is about to come down.
But what about you?
The guard asked.
I'm staying.
Ira said firmly, grabbing her sword.
Vest in us needs backup.
The guard hesitated, then nodded, rallying the others to retreat. Ira charged toward the pedestal again, ignoring the heat and the searing pain in her arm from the earlier blast. She couldn't destroy the fragment directly, but she could disrupt the ritual. Her eyes darted to the runes carved into the ground around the pedestal. If she could break those, with a roar, Ira drove her blade into one of the glowing symbols. The ground shuddered, and the light from the fragment dimmed slightly. Encouraged, she slashed at another rune, the chamber trembling with each strike. Solaris turned, his eyes narrowing as he saw what Ira was doing. "No!" bellowed, unleashing a blast of fire toward her. Vestinus intercepted it, his blade absorbing the energy as he pushed forward.
You'll face me, Solaris.
Vestinus growled, slamming into the cult leader with renewed force. The clash of their weapons echoed through the ruins, the energy of their blows sending waves of heat and force through the air. Ira gritted her teeth, driving her sword into the final rune. The entire ruin shook violently, and the fragment's glow faltered. The pedestal cracked, pieces of stone falling away as the magic binding the fragment began to unravel.
No!
Solaris cried, his composure breaking. He swung his staff wildly, his strikes becoming desperate. Vestinus took the opening, driving his blade into Solaris's chest. The cult leader gasped, his eyes wide with shock as the fire around him extinguished. Vestinus pulled his blade free, stepping back as Solaris collapsed to the ground.
The light will not die with me.
Solaris rasped before falling still. The fragment pulsed one last time, then shattered into 1,000 pieces. The ruins fell silent, the oppressive heat dissipating as the magic faded. Vestinus and Ira stood amidst the wreckage, breathing heavily. The remaining cultists had fled, leaving behind only the echoes of their failure.
We did it.
Ira said, wiping blood from her cheek. Vestinus nodded, though his expression remained grim.
This was only part of the lens. If the cult still has other pieces...
Then we'll find them.
Ira said firmly.
One step at a time.
Vestinus glanced at the shards of the fragment, their glow fading to nothing.
The sun's judgment has been delayed, but this fight isn't over.
Together, they turned and walked out of the ruins, ready to face whatever came next. Chapter 3. Shadows of the Past. The winds of Jorvik whispered of the battle in the ruins, carrying news of the solar cult's presence to every corner of the city. As the sun rose, Vestinus and Ira returned to their quarters to regroup. Though the Thay had disrupted the ritual and defeated Solaris, neither could shake the lingering weight of the fragmented auroral lens. Vestinus sat at his desk, poring over an ancient text illuminated by the soft glow of a lantern. The words, written in a long-dead language, spoke of the lens's origins, a relic forged by an ancient order who sought to wield the sun's power as both a beacon of hope and a weapon of destruction.
The auroral lens was never meant for mortal hands.
Vestinus murmured to himself, his clawed fingers tracing the faded script.
Its creators locked it away after seeing the devastation it caused, scattering its pieces across Veldrith.
He paused, glancing at the shards of the fragment they had recovered. Their faint warmth was unsettling, a reminder of the energy still locked within. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts.
Enter,
He called. Ira stepped inside, her expression grim.
We've got a problem.
What kind of problem?
Vestinus asked, leaning back in his chair.
Rumours.
She replied, crossing her arms.
Whispers about another piece of the lens. A trader claims to have seen it in the possession of a travelling priest heading east.
Vestinus frowned.
The cultists will hear of this too if they haven't already.
Exactly.
Ira said.
If they're moving as quickly as before, we need to get ahead of them.
By mid-morning, Vestinus and Ira were riding east along the main trade route, accompanied by a small party of guards. The road was lined with ancient trees, their gnarled branches reaching overhead like skeletal hands. Birds chirped nervously, their songs interrupted by the distant rustling of the wind.
Tell me about the priest.
Vestinus said as they rode. Ira adjusted the strap of her scabbard.
Not much to tell. He's a wandering scholar from the Order of the Guiding Flame. They're healers, historians, mostly harmless. But if he's carrying a piece of the lens, he's in danger.
The Order's knowledge of artifacts runs deep.
Festinus said thoughtfully.
If he has a fragment, he may understand its true nature, or worse, he may not.
By midday, they reached a small village nestled between rolling hills. The air was thick with the smell of hay and smoke, and the streets were bustling with farmers and merchants. They dismounted near the central square where a group of villagers had gathered. Ira approached a woman carrying a basket of apples.
We're looking for a priest. He may have passed through recently.
The woman hesitated, glancing nervously at the guards before nodding.
You mean Father Aldrich? He was here 2 nights ago speaking of the sun's blessings, but he left in a hurry. Said he felt something was wrong.
Which direction did he go? Ira pressed.
Toward the old watchtower in the hills.
The woman replied.
He seemed frightened, as if someone was following him.
Ira exchanged a glance with Vestinus.
The cult.
Vestinus nodded.
We need to move quickly.
The trail to the watchtower was steep and treacherous, winding through dense thickets and rocky outcrops. As they climbed, the air grew cooler, the shadows deeper. By the time they reached the summit, the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and red. The watchtower stood in ruins, its crumbling walls overgrown with ivy. A faint light flickered inside, casting long shadows through the broken stonework.
He's here.
Vestinus said, dismounting and drawing his blade. Ira and the guards followed suit, their movements cautious as they approached the entrance. Inside, the priest knelt beside a small fire, his back to them. He wore simple robes, their hems stained with dirt and ash. At his side lay a satchel, its flap open to reveal the unmistakable glint of gold.
Father Aldrich?
Ira called softly. The priest turned, his eyes wide with fear.
Stay back. I won't let them take it.
We're not with the cult.
Vestinus said, lowering his blade slightly.
We've come to help.
Aldrich hesitated, his gaze flicking between them and the doorway.
How can I trust you? They wear disguises.
A sudden crash interrupted him as the door burst open. Robed cultists flooded the room, their weapons gleaming in the firelight.
Protect the fragment.
Ira shouted, drawing her sword. The chamber erupted into chaos. Vestinus engaged the cultists head-on, his blade slicing through the air with precision. Ira fought beside him, her strikes swift and unrelenting. Aldrich scrambled to protect the satchel, clutching it to his chest as the guards formed a protective circle around him. One of the cultists broke through the line, lunging for Aldrich. The priest raised his hand instinctively, and a burst of blinding light filled the room, sending the cultists sprawling. Vestinus turned, momentarily stunned by the display. "Oh!"
Aldrich!
he shouted.
What did you do?
The priest looked at his hands, trembling.
I don't know. It wasn't me. It was the fragment.
The remaining cultists retreated, their leader snarling as he shouted,
This isn't over!
before disappearing into the night. As the dust settled, Vestinus approached Aldrich, his expression grave.
The fragment's power is awakening. It's already affecting you.
Aldrich clutched the satchel tightly.
I didn't mean to use it. I was trying to keep it safe.
Safe isn't enough.
Vestinus said.
If the cult gets their hands on this, they'll complete the lens, and we won't survive what comes next.
Ira stepped forward, her jaw set.
Then we keep moving. We need to get this to Jorvik, where it can be protected.
Aldrich nodded reluctantly, his fear giving way to resolve.
I'll go with you. If this is my burden to bear, I'll see it through.
Vestinus glanced at the horizon, where the first stars were beginning to appear.
Then let's not waste any time. The cult won't stop until they have what they want.
Together they left the ruined watchtower, the fragment's faint glow lighting their path as they descended into the darkness below. Chapter 4. The Pursuit. The journey back to Jorvik was fraught with tension. The fragment's glow, faint but constant, seemed to pulse with each step as if resonating with the land itself. Father Aldrich carried it in a satchel strapped securely to his side, his hands gripping the leather straps with white-knuckled determination. Vestinus and Ira flanked him, their weapons at the ready, while the guards brought up the rear, scanning the dense forest for signs of pursuit.
This thing,
Aldrich muttered, glancing down at the satchel.
it feels alive, like it's whispering to me.
Vestinus shot him a sharp look.
Don't listen to it. The fragment feeds on your mind. The longer you carry it, the harder it will be to resist.
Aldrich swallowed hard, his face pale.
I didn't ask for this.
None of us did.
Ira said curtly, her eyes scanning the tree line.
But if we don't stop the cult, no one will be left to care.
The group pressed onward, the forest growing darker as the sun dipped below the horizon. Shadows stretched long across the ground, and the air grew cold and still. The faint crunch of boots on fallen leaves was the only sound, but it wasn't long before that quiet was broken. Vestinus halted suddenly, his hand raised to signal silence. The group froze, and for a moment, only the sound of their breathing filled the air. Then it came, the soft rustle of movement in the underbrush, too deliberate to be the wind.
They're here.
Vestinus whispered.
Spread out, but stay close enough to regroup.
The guards drew their weapons, forming a defensive circle around Aldrich. Ira crouched low, her sword drawn, her sharp eyes scanning the dark forest. Vestinus stepped forward, his blade glowing faintly with arcane energy, illuminating the twisted trees around them. From the shadows, a voice called out, smooth and mocking.
You carry what belongs to the sun.
Vestinus narrowed his eyes.
It belongs to no one, least of all your cult.
The voice chuckled, echoing unnaturally.
You cannot deny the light. The lens will be whole, and all will kneel before its radiance.
From the darkness, cultists emerged, their robes blending with the gloom. Their faces were obscured by masks shaped like rays of the sun, and their weapons glinted in the faint light of the fragment.
Defensive positions.
Ira barked, stepping back to guard Aldrich. The cultists charged, and the first clash was brutal. Vestinus met the cultists head-on, his blade cutting through their ranks with precision. The glow of his sword lit the battlefield in flashes, revealing the chaos of the fight. Ira fought beside him, her movement swift and deliberate, each strike finding its mark. Aldrich huddled in the centre of the guards, clutching the satchel as if it were his lifeline. One of the cultists broke through the defensive line, lunging for him with a jagged blade. Aldrich screamed, raising his hands instinctively, and once again a burst of light erupted from the fragment, throwing the attacker backward. Ira glanced back, her eyes narrowing.
You're attracting them, Aldrich. We need to move.
Vestinus parried another attack, his voice firm.
Ira, cover him. Guards, fall back in formation. We're not holding this position.
The group began to retreat, fighting as they moved. The cultists pressed their advantage, their chanting rising in intensity as they pushed closer to the fragment. Vestinus cut through another robed figure, his blade slicing through the glowing sigil on their chest.
They won't stop.
He muttered, his breath heavy.
Not until they have it.
Ira slashed at a cultist who had nearly grabbed Aldrich, her face set in a grim snarl.
Then we make them stop.
As the group emerged from the tree line into a clearing, Vestinus halted, his eyes scanning the open space.
We're too exposed here. We need a defensible position.
There's a stream just ahead.
One of the guards said, his voice tight with strain.
A ridge overlooks it. We could hold them there.
Vestinus nodded.
Go, quickly.
The group broke into a run, the cultists hot on their heels. The trees gave way to a shallow stream that glittered faintly under the moonlight. Beyond it, a steep ridge loomed, its rocky face jagged and foreboding.
Up the ridge!
Ira shouted, covering the group's retreat as they scrambled up the rocky incline. Vestinus stayed by her side, cutting down another attacker before following. At the top of the ridge, the group turned to face their pursuers. The cultists paused at the base, their chanting reaching a fever pitch. One stepped forward, holding a staff that glowed with a golden light.
You cannot run from the sun,
He declared.
The lens is ours by divine right.
Vestinus stepped forward, his sword raised.
Come and claim it, then.
The cultists surged forward, their weapons gleaming. Vestinus and Ira met them at the edge of the ridge, their blades flashing in the moonlight. The guards held the line, their shields forming a barrier around Aldrich. The battle was fierce, the narrow terrain forcing the cultists into a bottleneck. Vestinus fought like a whirlwind, his arcane strikes cutting through the robed figures with precision. Ira moved with deadly efficiency, her blade finding its mark again and again. But the cultists were relentless. Their chanting grew louder, the golden staff at their rear glowing brighter with each passing moment. From its tip, A beam of searing light shot forward, striking the ridge and sending chunks of rock flying.
We can't hold this position.
Ira shouted, blocking a strike aimed at her chest. Vestinus turned, his eyes locking onto the staff.
Then we take out their source of power.
He surged forward, cutting through the cultists in his path. The staff-bearer saw him coming, raising the weapon to unleash another beam of light. Vestinus dodged, the heat scorching the air beside him. With a roar, he brought his blade down, cleaving the staff in two. The golden light flickered and died, and the cultists faltered. Seeing their advantage lost, they began to retreat, melting back into the shadows of the forest. As silence fell over the clearing, Vestinus turned back to the group. Ira leaned against a rock, catching her breath, while Aldrich sat trembling, the satchel still clutched to his chest.
Are you hurt?
Vestinus asked, kneeling beside him. Aldrich shook his head.
No, but this thing, it's too much. I can't carry it anymore.
Vestinus placed a hand on the satchel, his expression grave.
You have to. The cult will keep coming, and we need to keep it out of their hands.
Ira stepped forward, her gaze hard.
We need to reach Jorvik. This fragment is too dangerous to keep moving through the wild.
Vestinus nodded, rising to his feet.
Then let's not waste any time. The longer we wait, the closer they get.
With the moonlight guiding their path, the group set off once more, their resolve hardened by the battle. But the fragment's faint glow cast long shadows on the ground, a reminder that the fight was far from over. Chapter 5. The Beacon. The group reached the outskirts of Jorvik just before dawn, weary from the long night. The faint light of the rising sun painted the horizon in soft gold and pink hues, but the sight brought no comfort. The fragment in Father Aldrich's satchel pulsed faintly, as if sensing their approach to the city. The guards, their armour dulled by blood and dirt, led the way into the city gates. Vestinus and Ira flanked Aldrich, their eyes scanning for any sign of cult activity. Though the streets were quiet, a tension hung in the air, a feeling that they had brought danger with them.
We'll take the fragment to the council chambers,
Ira said as they moved through the city.
It's the safest place for now.
Safe.
Aldrich muttered, his voice shaking.
I don't think anywhere is safe while this thing exists.
Vestinus didn't respond. He could feel the fragment's energy growing stronger, as if it was feeding on something in the city, something tied to the ley lines beneath their feet. Inside the council hall, Elder Hrothgar and Elder Ingrid stood waiting. Both looked haggard, their faces lined with worry. News of the cult's resurgence and the battle in the ruins had spread, leaving the city on edge.
You've brought the fragment,
Hrothgar said, his voice heavy.
and with it, more danger, I fear.
Vestinus placed the satchel carefully on the table in the centre of the room.
This is only one piece of the auroral lens. The cult will stop at nothing to claim it.
Ingrid leaned forward, her piercing green eyes locked on the satchel.
You said there were others.
Scattered.
Vestinus said.
But if the cult has already found this fragment, it's only a matter of time before they locate the rest.
Hrothgar frowned.
What do you propose we do?
Destroy it.
Aldrich said suddenly, his voice breaking the tense silence. He stood with his hands clenched into fists, his pale face marked by exhaustion.
We destroy this fragment before it can cause any more harm.
Ira glanced at him, then at Vestinus.
Is that possible?
Vestinus hesitated.
The auroral lens was created with powerful magic, magic tied to the sun itself. Destroying it would require a force greater than what any of us possess.
Hrothgar exhaled sharply, his shoulders sagging.
Then we must protect it until such a force can be found.
Protecting it isn't enough.
Veldrith said.
It's already affecting me, whispering to me. If the cult gets their hands on it...
They won't.
Ira interjected firmly.
We'll defend it with everything we have.
Later, Vestinus stood in the council chamber's private library, poring over ancient texts by the light of a lantern. The fragment sat in the centre of the room, its glow faint but persistent. He could feel its energy tugging at him, urging him to wield it, to let its power flow through him. He shook his head, forcing the thoughts aside. The lens had already corrupted countless minds. He wouldn't allow it to do the same to him. Ira entered, her boots clicking softly against the stone floor.
Any luck?
She asked, leaning against the doorway.
Nothing useful.
Vestinus admitted, closing one of the books with a heavy thud.
The texts speak of the lens's creation, but not its destruction.
Ira crossed her arms, her expression troubled.
The council is on edge. Half of them want to keep the fragment hidden here, and the other half think we should move it somewhere more remote.
They're both wrong.
Vestinus said, standing.
The cult will find it no matter where we hide it. The only solution is to destroy it.
Ira sighed.
And if we can't?
Vestinus didn't answer. That night, as the city slept, a strange light filled the sky. A beam of golden energy shot upward from the council chamber, piercing the heavens like a spear of fire. The ground trembled, and an unnatural heat swept through the streets. Vestinus and Ira rushed outside, the beam illuminating their faces. The fragment's energy had erupted, using the ley lines beneath Jorvik as a conduit.
They're calling to it.
Vestinus realized, his voice filled with dread.
The cult is trying to take control.
Ira drew her swords.
Then we stop them.
The two ran toward the council chamber, where chaos had already erupted. Guards clashed with robed cultists in the courtyard, their blades flashing in the golden light. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burning wood, and the metallic tang of blood. Vestinus pushed through the fray, his sword crackling with arcane energy. He cut through a cultist, then another, his focus fixed on the chamber doors. Inside, the fragment hovered above the table, spinning rapidly as arcs of energy crackled around it. Father Aldrich stood nearby, his hands raised as if caught in a trance.
Aldrich!
Ira shouted, stepping forward.
What are you doing?
I can stop it.
Aldrich cried, his voice filled with desperation.
I just need more time.
Vestinus grabbed his arm, pulling him back.
You can't control it. The fragment is feeding on you.
The room trembled as the fragment's energy intensified, the beam of light growing brighter. Outside, the cultists began to chant, their voices rising in unison.
They're amplifying the fragment.
Vestinus said, his mind racing.
If they succeed, they'll use it to summon the rest of the lens.
I returned to him, her expression grim.
How do we stop it?
Vestinus stared at the fragment, its pulsing light reflecting in his dark eyes.
We disrupt the energy flow. The ley lines are fueling it. If we sever the connection...
It could destroy the fragment.
Ira finished.
Or us.
Do we have a choice?
Vestinus asked. Ira gripped her sword, nodding.
Let's do it.
As the battle raged outside, Vestinus and Ira worked quickly to disrupt the sigils carved into the chamber's floor. Each strike of Ira's blade sent a shockwave through the room, causing the fragment's light to flicker. A cultist burst into the chamber, his staff glowing with golden fire. Vestinus intercepted him, their weapons clashing in a shower of sparks. Ira continued her work, breaking the final sigil as the fragment emitted a deafening pulse of energy. The beam of light faltered, then exploded outward in a blinding flash. The cultists outside screamed as the energy dissipated, their connection to the fragment severed. When the light faded, the fragment lay still on the ground, its glow extinguished. The room was silent, save for the sound of heavy breathing. Ira picked up the now lifeless fragment, holding it up to the light.
Did we?
We stopped them.
Vestinus said, though his tone was cautious.
For now.
Outside, the surviving guards began to regroup, their eyes turning toward the horizon. Though the immediate danger had passed, both Vestinus and Ira knew the cult wasn't finished.
They'll come back,
Ira said, her voice firm.
And we'll be ready.
Vestinus replied, his hand resting on the hilt of his blade. Together, they stepped into the dawn, ready to face whatever shadows the rising sun would reveal. Chapter 6, A Fractured Alliance. The dawn was deceptively calm. The golden beam that had pierced the sky the night before had faded, leaving Jorvik shrouded in an uneasy quiet. Despite the temporary victory over the cult, the city's defences felt fragile, as though held together by sheer will rather than strength. In the council chambers, Vestinus, Ira and Father Aldrich stood before the elders. The extinguished fragment lay on the table, its once blazing surface now dull and inert.
This is what remains of the fragment,
Vestinus said, his voice steady.
We disrupted the cult's ritual, but their efforts are far from over.
Elder Hrothgar stroked his beard, his expression grave.
How long before they return?
A matter of days, maybe less.
Ira replied.
They'll regroup and try again. They won't stop until they have all the fragments.
Elder Ingrid leaned forward, her piercing green eyes fixed on Vestinus.
And what of this fragment? Can it still be used?
Vestinus glanced at the lifeless shard.
Not as it is. But the energy it contained hasn't disappeared. It's merely dormant. The cult will find a way to reignite it.
Hrothgar slammed his fist on the table.
Then why haven't we destroyed it yet?
We've tried.
Vestinus said, his tone sharp.
Its magic is tied to the ley lines. Destroying it would take power far beyond anything we possess.
Then we must hide it,
Ingrid said firmly.
Take it far from here, somewhere the cult cannot reach.
Uldric, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. His face was pale, his hands trembling.
I'll take it. The fragment. It seems to respond to me. I can shield it.
No.
Vestinus said quickly.
It's already affecting you. The longer you carry it, the more it will corrupt you.
But...
No.
Vestinus repeated, his voice firm. After the meeting, Vestinus and Ira stepped out into the quiet streets of Jorvik. The morning sunlight did little to lift the weight on their shoulders.
We're running out of options,
Ira said, breaking the silence.
If we can't destroy it and we can't keep it safe, what's left?
Vestinus looked up at the sky, his crimson skin catching the light.
There's an old legend,
he began.
A place called the Sun Forge, hidden deep in the northern mountains. It's said to be the site where the auroral lens was first forged, a place where the sun's energy burns stronger than anywhere else.
Ira frowned.
And you think this forge could destroy the fragment?
It's possible,
Vestinus said.
If we can channel its energy properly.
If?
Ira repeated, shaking her head.
You're betting everything on a legend.
What other choice do we have?
Vestinus countered.
The cult will never stop, and neither will the fragment's influence. If the Sun Forge exists, it may be the only way.
Ira hesitated, then sighed.
Fine. But how do we find it? The northern mountains are vast.
Vestinus smirked faintly.
I know someone who might be able to help.
They found Leona in the dimly lit corner of a tavern, nursing a cup of something that smelled potent. The thief and scholar had a reputation for knowing things others didn't, though her allegiance was as slippery as her smile.
Well, well,
Leona said as they approached, leaning back in her chair.
If it isn't my two favourite troublemakers, what brings you to my humble corner of Jorvik?
We need your help,
Ira said bluntly. Leona raised an eyebrow, her scarred face catching the light.
That's new. Usually you're barking orders or chasing me down for petty crimes.
Ira rolled her eyes.
This isn't about you, Leona. We're looking for the Sun Forge.
Leona's smile faded. She set her cup down, studying them carefully.
The Sun Forge, huh? Big ask. Dangerous too. And you think I know where to find it?
We know you do,
Vestinus said.
You've mapped the Northern Territories, haven't you?
Leona chuckled, shaking her head.
I don't know whether to be flattered or annoyed that you've been keeping tabs on me.
Both,
Ira said.
Now, are you in or not?
Leona considered them for a long moment, then sighed.
Fine, I'll take you. But it's going to cost you.
Ira folded her arms.
You'll be well compensated if we survive.
Leona grinned.
I'll take that as a yes.
The trio left Jorvik the following morning, travelling north with the fragment secured in a reinforced case. Uldric, though reluctant, remained behind under the council's orders to aid in fortifying the city. As they ventured deeper into the wilderness, the landscape grew harsher, the trees thinning into jagged cliffs and snow-dusted peaks. Leona led the way, her movements confident despite the treacherous terrain.
The Sun Forge is said to be hidden in a valley guarded by ancient wards,
she explained.
The last time I was up here, I found some ruins that might fit the description.
Let's hope they're the right ones,
Ira muttered, gripping her cloak against the biting wind. As they climbed higher, the fragment began to pulse faintly, its glow returning with each step. Vestinus could feel its energy resonating with the land, a connection that both guided and unnerved him.
We're getting close,
he said. Leona stopped abruptly, holding up a hand.
Wait.
Ahead, the narrow path opened into a wide plateau, where a group of cultists had set up camp. Golden symbols glowed on the ground, their light illuminating the faces of the robed figures as they chanted in unison.
They're ahead of us,
Iga whispered, drawing her sword. Vestinus's eyes narrowed.
We can't let them finish whatever they're doing. If they're attuning the ley lines to call the lens,
Then we hit them hard and fast.
Ira said, stepping forward. Leona grabbed her arm.
You might want to rethink that. Look.
From the centre of the ritual circle, a figure stepped forward, his robes adorned with intricate sun motifs. He carried a staff that glowed with a golden light, its energy pulsing in time with the fragment.
Solaris.
Vestinus growled. The cult leader raised his staff, his voice booming.
The lens will be whole, and its light shall burn away the darkness.
The ground trembled as the ley lines surged with power, their energy converging on the circle. Vestinus turned to Ira and Leona, his expression grim.
We take him down, now.
Ira nodded, her grip tightening on her sword.
Let's finish this.
Together they charged toward the plateau, the fragment's glow intensifying as the battle began. Chapter 7. The Burning Plateau. The cultists scattered across the plateau were thrown into chaos as Vestinus, Ira and Leona charged into their midst. The golden sigils etched into the ground pulsed brighter with every passing moment, feeding energy into the glowing staff held aloft by Solaris. The leader's voice boomed across the battlefield, his words laced with power.
Hold the lines! The lens will rise!
Solaris commanded, his staff casting waves of golden light that shielded the cultists and reinforced their morale. Vestinus moved like a whirlwind, his crimson form darting between attackers. His blade crackled with arcane energy, each strike carving through the protective ward Solaris had cast.
Ira, we need to break the circle.
He shouted, deflecting a cultist strike with a quick parry. Ira was already moving, her sword slicing through a pair of cultists guarding one of the glowing sigils. She drove her blade into the ground, disrupting the intricate runes and causing the light to flicker. The ground beneath her trembled, a low rumble signalling the ley line's instability.
I've got one!
She yelled, spinning to block another cultist's attack, and Leona, nimble as ever, darted into the fray. She avoided direct confrontation, opting instead to disable the cultists' weapons and shatter their lanterns, casting the battlefield into deeper shadows.
You know, I didn't sign up for a full-on war.
She quipped, kicking a robed figure into the dirt.
But it's growing on me.
Solaris stood at the centre of the plateau, his staff blazing like a miniature sun. With a flick of his wrist, he sent a wave of searing heat across the battlefield. The air shimmered, and several guards who had joined the fight fell back, their armour glowing red-hot. Vestinus charged toward him, his blade raised.
Your power is borrowed, Solaris. It's not yours to wield.
Solaris turned, his face calm but his eyes blazing with amber light.
And yet, it is in my grasp, Fallen One. You will never understand the glory of the sun's true purpose.
He swung the staff in a wide arc, a pulse of golden light slamming into Vestinus and sending him skidding across the rocky ground. Vestinus groaned, his body aching as he pushed himself upright. Ira broke another sigil, the light dimming further.
That's two!
She shouted.
Just one more.
Leona, spotting the final sigil, sprinted toward it. Cultists swarmed her, their daggers glinting in the faint light, but she dodged and weaved, using her speed and agility to stay one step ahead. Sliding beneath one attacker's swing, she slammed a small explosive vial onto the ground near the sigil.
Time to go boom,
she muttered, rolling clear just as the vial detonated. The explosion shattered the final sigil, and the golden light around the plateau flickered violently. The tremors grew stronger, cracks forming in the earth as the ley lines destabilized. Solaris roared, his staff flaring with desperate energy.
No, the lens is eternal. You cannot stop its light.
Vestinus regained his footing and advanced on Solaris, his blade glowing with crimson fire.
Your light is nothing but destruction,
he growled,
and I will extinguish it.
The two clashed, their weapons colliding with a sound like a thunderclap. Solaris fought with the fury of a cornered beast, each strike of his staff sending waves of heat rippling through the air. But Vestinus was relentless, his centuries of experience guiding his every move. Ira joined the fight, flanking Solaris and forcing him to defend on two fronts.
You're finished, Solaris,
she snarled, driving her sword toward his side. Solaris deflected the blow but stumbled, the cracks in the plateau throwing him off balance. Leona, perched on a nearby rock, watched the battle with sharp eyes. She spotted the glowing staff, the source of Solaris's power, and an idea sparked.
Keep him busy,
she called, sprinting toward the fight. As Solaris swung his staff in a desperate arc, Leona darted in low, her movements swift and precise. She grabbed the staff, her fingers wrapping around its hot surface, and yanked it free from his grasp. Solaris screamed, his connection to the ley line severed. The staff's light dimmed as Leona hurled it into the cracks of the plateau. The ground beneath them trembled violently, the ley line surging out of control. Vestinus didn't hesitate. With a final powerful strike, he drove his blade into Solaris's chest. The cult leader gasped, his amber eyes dimming as he fell to his knees.
The light will never die.
Solaris whispered, his voice fading as he collapsed lifeless to the ground. The trembling plateau began to crumble, the ley line's energy spiraling out of control. Vestinus turned to Ira and Leona, his voice urgent.
We need to move, now!
The three of them sprinted toward the edge of the plateau as the ground split open behind them. They leapt to safety just as the plateau collapsed in a cascade of rubble, the energy within dissipating into the air. In the quiet that followed, the group stood on the edge of the ruins, catching their breath. The cultists had fled, their leader defeated, and their ritual shattered. Ira sheathed her sword, her gaze on the smouldering remains of the plateau.
Is it over?
She asked, her voice weary. Vestinus shook his head.
For now. But the cult isn't finished. As long as the other fragments remain, they'll keep trying.
Leona crossed her arms, a wry smile tugging at her lips.
Then I guess we've got more work to do.
Vestinus nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon.
The Sunforge is still our best chance. If we can reach it before the cult does, we may be able to end this for good.
Together, they turned and began the long journey north, the weight of their mission heavier than ever. But with Solaris defeated and the fragments secured, they carried with them the faintest glimmer of hope. Chapter 8. The Frozen Path. The journey north took the group from the jagged hills of Jorvik into a landscape of unrelenting cold. Snow blanketed the ground in thick drifts, and the frigid air bit at their exposed skin. The path to the Sunforge was treacherous, with sharp cliffs, hidden crevices, and icy winds that howled through the mountains. Leona led the way, her movement steady and confident despite the shifting terrain. Ira followed close behind, her sword strapped to her back and her gaze scanning for threats. Vestinus carried the dormant fragment in a reinforced case, slung over his shoulder. Though its light no longer shone, its presence was a constant weight on his mind.
Are we sure this Sunforge even exists?
Ira asked, her voice muffled by the thick scarf wrapped around her face.
It exists,
Vestinus replied.
I've seen references to it in ancient texts, always tied to the auroral lens. If there's any place capable of destroying the fragments, it's there.
Leona glanced back at him, her breath visible in the cold air.
Let's hope the cult doesn't beat us to it. They've got a knack for showing up at the worst possible time.
As the sun dipped below the horizon, the group made camp in the shadow of a towering peak. The fire crackled, its warmth a welcome reprieve from the icy chill. Vestinus sat apart from the others, his claws tracing the runes etched into the case containing the fragment. Ira approached, sitting beside him.
You've been quiet.
This place?
Vestinus said, gesturing to the surrounding mountains.
It feels familiar, as if the ley lines here are pulling at something deep within me.
Ira frowned.
Is that the fragment's influence?
Perhaps.
Vestinus said.
Or perhaps it's the forge itself. If the Sunforge was truly the site where the lens was created, its energy may still linger.
Leona joined them, holding a cup of steaming tea.
Well, whatever's waiting up there, let's hope it's not worse than what we've already faced.
Ira smirked.
I'm not sure anything could top Solaris.
Leona raised an eyebrow.
You'd be surprised.
The following day, the group resumed their climb. The higher they ascended, the harsher the conditions became. Snowfall obscured the path, and the wind whipped around them with relentless fury. Several times they were forced to stop and adjust their route, navigating around sheer cliffs and unstable ledges. As they crested a ridge, Leona froze, holding up a hand.
Wait, do you see that?
Ahead, the snow gave way to a vast circular plateau. In the centre stood a massive, ancient structure, an enormous forge built of black stone, its shape resembling a great anvil. Even from a distance, Vestinus could feel the energy radiating from it, a deep thrumming pulse that resonated through the ground.
The Sunforge,
Vestinus said, his voice hushed. Ira stepped forward, her eyes narrowing.
And the cult?
Scattered across the plateau were dozens of robed figures, their golden sigils glowing faintly in the snowy gloom. At their centre, a towering figure in elaborate robes held a staff aloft, its light piercing the storm.
They're already here?
Leona muttered.
Of course they are.
The group crouched behind a rocky outcrop, observing the cultists from a distance. Vestinus studied their formation, his mind racing.
They're preparing a ritual,
he said.
They've likely attuned the ley lines to the forge.
Ira nodded.
If they use the forge to reignite the fragment, they'll gain control of its full power.
Not if we stop them first.
Vestinus said. He turned to Leona.
Can you create a distraction?
Leona smirked, pulling a small satchel from her belt.
You're lucky I came prepared.
As Leona slipped away, Vestinus and Ira moved closer to the forge, staying low to avoid detection. The pulsing energy grew stronger with every step, its rhythm matching the steady beat of their hearts. Suddenly, a series of explosions erupted on the far side of the plateau, sending cultists scattering. Flames and smoke billowed into the air, obscuring the view and throwing the ritual into disarray.
That's our cue,
Ira said, drawing her sword. The two charged into the chaos, their blades flashing in the dim light. Vestinus cut through the first line of cultists with ease, his arcane-infused strike sending them sprawling. Ira fought beside him, her movements precise and lethal. The towering figure at the centre of the ritual turned to face them, his staff glowing with radiant energy.
You cannot stop the Sun Forge's awakening,
he bellowed.
The lens will be whole, and the light will burn away the unworthy.
Vestinus raised his blade.
Not while we stand.
The figure swung his staff, unleashing a wave of golden fire. Vestinus and Ira dove aside, the ground where they'd stood erupting in flames. Vestinus retaliated with a burst of crimson energy, the blast striking the figure and sending him stumbling. Ira pressed the advantage, slashing at the staff with her sword. The blow shattered the glowing crystal at its tip, and the figure roared in fury as his power faltered. Meanwhile, Leona darted through the chaos, disabling cultists and scattering their supplies. She reached the forge's base, her sharp eyes scanning the ancient runes carved into its surface.
This thing is alive,
she muttered, feeling the heat radiating from the stone. As she worked to decipher the runes, the fragment in Vestinus's case began to glow, its energy responding to the forge's pull. Vestinus sensed the change and shouted to Leona.
We need to destroy it now.
I'm working on it,
she called back, her hands flying over the runes. The towering figure roared again, his voice echoing across the plateau.
You will not deny the sun's will.
He raised his arms, drawing on the ley line's energy to summon a final surge of power. Vestinus charged toward him, his blade blazing with crimson light. Their weapons collided, the force of the impact shaking the ground. The cultist's strength was formidable, but Vestinus's determination burned brighter. With a roar, Vestinus drove his blade through the figure's chest. The cultist's eyes widened in shock before he crumpled to the ground, his staff shattering beside him. Leona shouted from the forge.
I've got it. Bring the fragment.
Vestinus and Ira ran to the forge, the glowing fragment pulsing brighter with each step. Leona activated the ancient mechanism, and the forge roared to life, its fiery core illuminating the stormy sky. Vestinus placed the fragment on the forge's surface, its light flaring as the energy of the Sun Forge engulfed it. The ground trembled, and a deafening crack echoed across the plateau as the fragment shattered into countless shards, its energy dissipating into the air. The cultists, now leaderless and disoriented, fled into the storm. The forge's glow faded, leaving only the faint hum of the ley lines beneath the ground. Ira sheathed her sword, breathing heavily.
Is it over?
Vestinus nodded, his expression resolute.
One fragment down. But the fight isn't over. The other pieces are still out there.
Leona smirked, brushing snow from her coat.
Then I guess we've got a long road ahead.
Together, they turned away from the Sun Forge, ready to face whatever dangers the remaining fragments would bring. Chapter 9. The Eternal Balance. The winds howled as the group descended from the Sun Forge, their mission incomplete, but their resolve stronger than ever. The shattered fragment's energy had dispersed into the ley lines, the immediate threat neutralized. Yet as Vestinus, Ira, and Leona trudged back toward Jorvik, the weight of their victory felt hollow. They knew the cult would not stop. There were still other fragments of the auroral lens scattered across Veldrith, and each one was a step closer to ultimate destruction. When they returned to Jorvik, the city greeted them with a mix of relief and apprehension. News of their victory at the Sunforge spread quickly, but the shadow of the solar cult's ambitions loomed large. Father Aldrich met them at the gates, his face pale but resolute.
The council is waiting for you,
he said, his voice tight with urgency. In the council chambers, Vestina stood before the gathered elders, recounting the events at the Sunforge. Ira and Leona flanked him, their presence a silent testament to the sacrifices made. Elder Hrothgar shook his head, his expression grim.
You've destroyed one fragment, but at what cost? The ley lines are destabilized, and the cult remains a threat.
They're weaker now.
Ira countered.
Without Solaris, their leadership is fractured.
They'll find another leader.
Ingrid said, her sharp eyes fixed on Vestinas.
You know this, don't you? The cult's beliefs are too deeply rooted to die with one man.
Vestinas inclined his head.
You're right, which is why we can't stop here. The remaining fragments must be destroyed. Only then will their power truly be broken.
Hrothgar sighed.
And how do you propose to do that? The Sunforge was a singular opportunity. There are no more forges, no other places of concentrated power.
Vestinus's gaze hardened.
There is another way.
That evening, Vestinus gathered Ira and Leona in his study, the flickering lantern casting long shadows across the room.
You sounded confident back there.
Ira said, leaning against the doorframe.
But I don't think you have a plan.
I do.
Vestinus said, his voice low. He opened a heavy tome, its pages filled with faded runes.
The fragments draw their power from the ley lines, but they're also bound to a single origin, the place where the auroral lens was enchanted. If we can sever that connection, the fragments will be rendered inert.
Leona frowned.
And where exactly is this origin?
Vestinus pointed to a map spread across the table.
It's called the Valley of Radiance, a hidden basin where the ley lines converge in their purest form. The lens was empowered there, and it's where the cult will go to complete their plans.
Ira crossed her arms.
Then we go there first. Stop them before they can regroup.
Leona smirked.
Sounds suicidal. I'm in.
The journey to the valley was the most grueling yet. The group travelled through jagged cliffs, dense forests, and barren wastelands, following the faint trails of energy that led them to the heart of the ley lines. The closer they got, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air shimmered with heat, even in the cold of the highlands, and the ground hummed faintly beneath their feet. When they finally reached the valley, it was as if they had stepped into another world. The basin glowed with an ethereal light, the convergence of ley lines creating a surreal landscape of floating crystals, radiant pools and beams of energy that arced across the sky. At its centre stood an altar of golden stone, ancient and pristine, and waiting for them was the cult. The remnants of the solar cult had gathered, their ranks bolstered by new zealots. At their centre stood a robed figure, holding a staff crackling with golden fire. A new leader, one who had risen from Solaris's ashes.
You've come to witness the ascension of the lens.
The figure said, their voice echoing unnaturally.
You cannot stop the sun's will.
Vestinus drew his blade, its crimson glow cutting through the radiant haze.
The sun has no will, only the ambition of those who claim its power.
The battle erupted in a storm of light and shadow. Cultists charged, their weapons glowing with energy drawn from the valley. Vestinus met them head-on, his strikes precise and devastating. Ira fought beside him, her blade carving through the chaos with deadly efficiency. Leona darted through the fray, using her agility to disable the cultists' defences.
I'm starting to miss the days when I just stole things.
She shouted over the din. At the altar, the new cult leader began the final ritual, their staff channeling the valley's energy into a golden orb suspended above the altar. The orb pulsed, growing brighter with each passing moment.
They're completing the lens,
Ira shouted. Vestinus turned to Leona.
Disable the altar. Ira and I will handle the leader.
Leona nodded, sprinting toward the altar as Vestinus and Ira engaged the cult leader. The figure fought with terrifying power, their strikes infused with the raw energy of the ley lines. But Vestinus's centuries of experience and Ira's unrelenting determination proved too much. As Vestinus drove his blade through the cult leader's chest, the valley trembled violently. The orb above the altar flared, its light blinding. Leona reached the altar, her hands flying over the ancient mechanisms.
This thing is rigged to blow.
She shouted.
Whatever you're going to do it now.
Vestina stepped toward the altar, the shattered fragments of the lens glowing faintly in his mind. He could feel their connection to the ley lines, their pull stronger than ever.
There's only one way to sever the connection,
he said, his voice calm. Ira's eyes widened.
No, you don't have to.
I do.
Vestinus interrupted.
The ley lines bind the fragments to me as much as they do to the valley. If I channel the energy back into the origin, I can destroy them.
Ira grabbed his arm.
You'll destroy yourself.
Vestinus smiled faintly.
I've lived longer than most. It's time I did something that matters.
Before she could stop him, Vestinus stepped onto the altar, his blade glowing with crimson fire. He plunged it into the golden orb, unleashing a surge of energy that consumed the valley. The fragment's power flowed into him, and with a final deafening crack, the orb shattered. When the light faded, the valley was silent. The cultists had fled, their power broken. Ira and Leona stood at the edge of the altar, their faces pale with grief. The altar was empty, Vestinus was gone. Back in Jorvik, Ira stood atop the city walls, gazing at the horizon. The Sunforge's glow had faded, and the ley lines had returned to their natural state. The auroral lens was no more, its fragments reduced to dust. Leona joined her, silent for a moment before speaking.
He saved us all, didn't he?
Ira nodded, her voice steady.
He did.
As the sun rose, its light bathed Jorvik in a warm glow. For the first time in months, the city felt at peace. But in the quiet, Ira couldn't help but wonder if the balance Vestinus had sacrificed himself to restore would hold. For now it was enough. Thank you for listening to The Tales of Veldrith. Books 1 and 2 are now available in paperback and on Kindle. Visit mattytaylor.com for more details.